Good morning, EDU MLS 428 students. Today's Wednesday, February 20th, and I guess we're all probably sitting tight to figure out if we're having yet another snow day. So I guess this is one of the benefits for having a course online. So we are in week 5, so I thought I'd construct another video to share with you all to sort of recap where we are and talk about where we're going next. So you'll notice if you go to content and if you go to the last module, Immigrant Youth at the Borderlands, I've actually put an audio clip there with some feedback on your case studies. And then if you go to assignments, you'll see that your feedback on your analysis of the case studies is posted, so you can click on that. And all your grades, everything else should be up to date up until now. And so all of your material is graded and feedback is posted. So that's the first piece of like logistical information. So for this week, our newest module is distinguishing between prejudice, discrimination, and oppression. And you are reading from Sensoy and D'Angelo. This is our sort of text for analytical framework, chapters 4 and chapter 5. Chapter 4, the main topics in there are prejudice, discrimination, and bias. And then chapter 5, the main topic there is oppression, and there's a discussion on the nature of oppression. It's first of all defining what oppression is and the nature of oppression. Social stratification is another key concept, and then dominance and hegemony are two other key concepts. I want everyone to make sure to not gloss over, so make sure to attend to the figures in this chapter. So there's a chart on page 64, figure 5.1, that is on group identities across relations of power. So this really sort of examines sort of intersectional identities and where sort of one way to begin to think about what it means to be a minoritized or a marginalized group and what it means to be a dominant group. This isn't the only way to think about this, and this is not to suggest that marginalized or minoritized groups don't have power at times or that dominant groups are not at times marginalized. But this is sort of one way to begin to construct an idea about how social stratification operates. And then another figure that you should also attend to, and sort of, we always like have these charts in books, and we tend to glance over them, but I really want you to just take a look and examine this closely. This one is on page 74, and this is patterns of internalized dominance and internalized oppression. So it gives some examples of what sort of behavioral patterns from dominant groups and minoritized groups. And again, you have these dichotomies here, and we know that identities are much more are fluid, right? So this is one way to organize and to begin to think about and shed light on sort of foundational aspects of behavioral patterns that can help us think about our work as educators or educational staff in schools, working with racially, culturally, and linguistically diverse youth, but also with an understanding that this is a fixed chart, right? And there's many nuances to begin to think about this. And then the last table that I want to call your attention to is this diagram from Michael Foucault's work called the Panopticon. And there's a description about it, and you can take a look at this image. Foucault's work is grounded in sort of a design of how the criminal justice system is organized, specifically the prison industrial complex. But you might also notice that there's another institution that is similarly organized, just in terms of design features, and you might begin to see how that relates to, again, our work in terms of curriculum and instruction and practices that are related to racially, culturally, and linguistically diverse youth. So this is from the Sensoi and D'Angelo text. And if you go to content for this module, you'll see that you have the discussion board topic here. And what you're asked to do is look at those concepts in the chapter. And I know some of you have already read this chapter because you've included these concepts in your case study analysis, so that's great. So the first part of your discussion board task is to just define those terms, so just clarify, because it's really important that we're distinguishing how these terms are different in the same ways that we're distinguishing between also thinking about race, right, and racism, and how that is different from prejudice and discrimination and oppression. And then I'm asking you to think about some ways that you might engage in anti-bias practices in your work with students. So you'll notice that there's a link to that's called additional resources to a couple of different sites that provide some examples for anti-bias practices that are specifically geared towards working with and teaching diverse youth. And so I ask that you choose and discuss at least 3 ways that you might incorporate those practices in your classroom, and maybe you've done some of that work already, or you're doing this work already, so feel free to both identify those practices and then share from your classroom practice. And then obviously the last part for discussion board is to respond to a peer and respond to your peers' examples. And, again, for all discussion board posts, you can ask questions, you can probe, you can agree, you can disagree, right? You can ask your peer to sort of think more about these topics and about what they've posted. And you can always go back to, again, our analytical framework that is generated from Sensoi and D'Angelo to sort of help engage in that discussion. So that is your discussion board posts. Some people have already begun posting. Just as a reminder, this is due on Sunday, the 24th, so this coming Sunday by 11:59 p.m. So make sure you posted and responded to a peer. Just sort of talking ahead just a little bit, you'll notice that we're going to be moving more specifically focused towards texts around emergent bilingual youth and supporting culture and language of those students, our students. So in the coming weeks, we'll be reading from Angela Valenzuela's text, Subtractive Schooling, and there's a quiz coming up. And then we'll be reading from Ofelia Garcia's chapter called Languaging Education, and that gives us some historical context and around educational practices around language instruction. And you'll be doing your second analysis. And then you'll be reading about language policy, also from the Garcia chapter and the case study text. And then we'll be looking at Lewis Mall and his colleagues' book around funds of knowledge, which I'm sure many of you have heard that concept before. And there'll be a discussion board assignment around that. So that will sort of take us to the second half of the course. The second half of the course is where we sort of flip to a project-based model. So if you look at the module that's entitled Teachers as Leaders and Advocates for Emergent Bilingual Youth, it's a full explanation of this project that you'll be working on. It's the development of a mock professional development session, because again, this course, a part of the rationale for this course is for folks who are working towards their certification as specialists in the teaching of ESL students. And again, I say the term emerging bilinguals students. So you'll see a complete outline in terms of the expectations for this assignment, and I'm sure many of you have already begun to look at that assignment. So what I'm going to ask you to do now is read through that assignment, and I'll be talking about it more in the coming weeks. But sort of as soon as possible, if you go to discussion board, this is where you sign up for your group. So there are three topics to sign up for. The first one is expanding shifting understandings about language. The second is improving school-based practices, policies, or services. And the third is fostering and sustaining school-family connections. So by the time we get to this second half of the course, everyone will have read about all of these topics and will have a foundational understanding of these topics. So your work will be to construct a professional development session that's inclusive of a PowerPoint presentation. So you'll be working collaboratively to develop this sort of thinking in terms of how you might present this to your faculty, to audience of other teachers in your school or other educational staff. Let me clarify that so we have 18 students in this course. So there are 3 topics, so there will be 2 groups for each topic. So we'll have group 1A and 1B, group 2A and 2B, and group 3A and 3B. So 1A and 1B, same topic, 2A, 2B, the second topic, 3A, 3B, the third topic. So each group will need 3 members. So make sure that you look at the sign up on D2L discussion board under topic, and you'll see the threads that are there. Look and see how many people have signed up, and then you'll be putting a quick post where you introduce yourself and provide your preferred contact information in your chosen thread. Be sure not to sign up for multiple threads. So we want to keep this as organized as possible so everything's clear to everyone. So obviously first come, first serve, and I would highly recommend that you reach out to the other group members once you have signed up using whatever communication mode that you all plan to utilize, and make sure that you're in that group and you're all sorted out. One thing that I'll just say real quick is that students often say, how am I going to work collaboratively with other people in an online course to develop this? And I'll just share with you real quick that I've been teaching this class or in other related classes with similar projects that are completely online, and you will be surprised how folks pull it together and not needing to meet in person. Some folks do choose to meet in person, but it is not necessary. So using Google Docs, using Google Slide, using text message, using Zoom, that's our video conference interface, using Skype, these are all ways, using FaceTime, these are all ways that you can talk together either synchronously or asynchronously, and document your work throughout the process, and it goes, and you have enough time to make this go and to do that successfully. So hold tight and trust the process, and I want to assure you that this can work. I believe that's all that I will share for now. Oh, the last thing, I'm sorry, is that I don't think I clarified this, so I'll just say this now, that I do have, I am available for virtual office hours. My virtual office hours, sorry, here goes my cat. My virtual office hours, okay, Pepper. My virtual office hours are Fridays from 3 to 4 p.m. So I can meet you virtually, or we can talk over the phone during that time. That's my sort of selected time. But obviously we can communicate and schedule a different time via email. So if you want to talk, schedule an appointment, we can set that up. I'm here to support you in the process, and interested in your thoughts, and available to answer questions. Some folks shoot me emails. I love the emails that you send and the questions that you ask. So just know that I'm here. I am on campus Tuesday, Wednesdays, Thursdays. So that's a way to see me in person as well. But I am reading your work, and just really enthusiastic about the ways that you all are engaging with the material and engaging with one another. So just keep that going. And yeah, and actually I just got a message that, well, at least my district, yet another snow day. So we'll see if your school has a snow day and if KU has a snow day as well. So happy Wednesday. Take care.